After I found out he was engaged to someone else while telling me he wasn't ready for commitment, he told me I was just his backup plan. I was devastated, but I walked away. Now he's trying to win me back. Hi Reddit, I'm 34F, and I honestly never thought I'd be writing one of these posts. But here I am, sorting through a mess I never saw coming, trying to figure out how someone I trusted so deeply could lie with such ease, and how far people will go to protect an illusion. This all started about 2 years ago when I met Rowan. He was 36, charming in that disarming, low-key kind of way. Not overly flashy, not trying too hard, just confident. He worked in IT security, owned a dog named Monty, and talked about his love for hiking and photography. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. My friend Nia had invited me last minute, and I almost didn't go, but I'm glad, and not glad, I did. Rowan and I hit it off immediately. We spent the entire night talking in the corner, laughing over bad wine and stories about weird coworkers. I wasn't looking for anything serious back then. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, but he made it feel easy, like I could breathe again. We started seeing each other regularly after that night. Weekly dates turned into weekends together. He met my sister, Mara, and even helped me fix the wonky shelves in my kitchen when they started leaning like the Tower of Pisa. Everything felt safe, real, but there were red flags. Small ones, the kind you ignore because everything else seems so good. He was vague about where he lived exactly, always saying he was in between places and crashing at a friend's while looking for a new apartment. He'd take calls in another room. He never posted me on social media, claiming he didn't really use it, even though I'd seen him scrolling through Instagram plenty of times. I chalked it up to him being private. Some people are, and I wasn't the type to push. Besides, he always showed up when I needed him. Like when I had a medical scare last winter, and he sat with me in the ER for 5 hours, holding my hand. Or when my mom fell and broke her hip, and he brought over groceries and made us soup. That stuff felt like proof. Still, I noticed something had shifted around our 1-year mark. Rowan started pulling away. He said work was hectic, and I believed him, until hectic turned into canceled dates, delayed replies, and an emotional distance I couldn't bridge. I asked if something was wrong, and he gave me the classic line, "I'm just not sure I'm ready for anything serious right now." It hurt, obviously, but I respected it. I told him I wouldn't wait around for someone who wasn't sure about me. We broke things off quietly. No drama, just a long, heavy silence over coffee at a corner cafe we used to love. I walked away thinking it was the mature thing to do. He didn't fight it. That should have been my first real clue. Fast forward to a few months. I'm healing, going to therapy, reconnecting with friends I'd unintentionally distanced myself from. Then I get a message on Instagram from a girl named Leona. The name doesn't ring a bell, but her profile picture shows her with Rowan, arms around each other, smiling like they just stepped out of a wedding catalog. Her message is short. "Hey, I think we need to talk." It's about Rowan. My heart drops into my stomach. I respond cautiously, trying not to sound paranoid. She replies almost instantly and asks if we can hop on a call. I agree, more out of curiosity than anything. We talk that night, and it turns out Leona is Rowan's fiancée. Fiancée. They'd been together for 3 years. She was planning their wedding. She found me because he left his laptop open and my messages popped up, still saved from months ago. Apparently, I wasn't the only one. There were at least 3 of us that she knew of. Maybe more. She sent me pictures of them on vacation, at engagement parties. A literal save-the-date card with their names printed in gold script. I stared at those pictures like they were crime scene evidence. When I confronted Rowan, because of course I did, he didn't even deny it. He actually had the nerve to say, "I didn't think it would go that far with you. You were more of a backup plan." A backup plan. That phrase keeps echoing in my head like a bad song on repeat. I remember feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching him look at me with that same calm, unbothered expression he always wore, and something inside me broke. I walked away that night and didn't look back. I blocked his number, deleted every photo, threw out the mug he left at my place. I didn't tell anyone at first. Part of me felt too humiliated to admit I'd been played that badly. But here's the thing about betrayal. It festers. And when you sit with it long enough, you stop feeling embarrassed and start getting angry. Really, really angry. And that's when I started putting things together. Little inconsistencies in his stories. Names he'd dropped casually that didn't add up. Mutual friends we'd met through that suddenly seemed distant. One of them even apologized to me later for not saying anything sooner. So I decided to do something about it. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or post his face all over Reddit. No, I was going to be patient, strategic, because Rowan had more to lose than I did. He had a reputation, a job that required a clean image, friends who thought he was a stand-up guy, and I had receipts. Every message, every voice note, every picture, every single lie. All right. So after that conversation with Leona and Rowan's little backup plan confession, I took a week to just sit with everything. I didn't rush to act, even though every part of me wanted to scream or expose him right then and there. But I kept hearing my therapist's voice in the back of my head. You don't have to react right away. You can respond when you're ready. So I waited. I didn't tell many people at first. Just my sister Mara and my best friend Cam. Mara wanted to go full scorched earth immediately. She's the kind of person who believes in justice with a capital J. Cam, on the other hand, was surprisingly calm about it. She just said, if you want to play this smart, don't act like you're mad. Yet, that stuck with me. So, I started with the most basic thing. I unblocked Rowan. Not because I wanted to talk to him, but because I wanted to observe. And sure enough, not even 2 days later, he messaged me. Rowan, hey, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I hope you're doing okay. I just stared at it for a while. He had no idea I'd spoken to Leona. No idea I knew about the engagement, the other women, the backup plan comment, nothing. He thought I'd just moved on, maybe even missed him. And that told me everything I needed to know. He was still lying. So I played along. Just enough to keep the door open. Me, I'm doing all right. Hope you're okay too. He replied instantly. We started messaging a little here and there. He'd ask how I was sleeping, if work was going all right, if I'd been back to that sushi place we used to love. It was almost surreal, like he was trying to pick things up where they left off, as if none of the awful truth had happened. I didn't mirror his energy. I kept it neutral, polite, but not warm. Still, he kept inching closer. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, he asked if I wanted to catch up properly. Rowan, no pressure or anything, but I'd love to grab a coffee sometime. Just to talk. I know I messed some things up. It was the first time he even hinted at messing up. So I said yes. We met at this small cafe near the art museum, somewhere public, neutral, and with enough people around that I didn't have to worry about him making a scene if things went sideways. I wore a plain sweater, no makeup, hair tied up. I wanted to look comfortable, like someone who was over it. And I guess I played the part well, because the moment he saw me, he smiled like we were old friends meeting after a long vacation. Wow, he said, sitting across from me. You look good. You always did, but I don't know. There's something different. I smiled politely. Thanks. We talked for a bit. Just surface-level stuff. He told me he'd left his job at the cybersecurity firm and was between opportunities. Said he was thinking of moving to another city. He didn't mention Leona once. Finally, he leaned forward and said, I've been thinking a lot about us. About what I lost. I think I was afraid back then. But seeing you now, I realize I might have made a huge mistake. I sipped my tea slowly, my heart thudding in my chest, but not from nerves. From anger. Because there he was, pretending to bare his soul, while a woman somewhere was still planning a wedding with him. I looked him straight in the eye and said, Did you ever really think about what it cost me? He blinked. What do you mean? I shrugged. Just that. When someone tells you they're not ready for commitment, you believe them. You adjust your life around that reality. But when it turns out they just weren't ready with you, that stings. He nodded slowly, looking guilty for a half second. I know. I wasn't in the right place. Were you engaged back then? I asked, keeping my tone flat. The color drained from his face. He sat back in his chair. Wait, what? I said. Were you engaged when you told me you weren't ready for commitment? Silence. For a full 10 seconds, he just stared at me. Then he said, How did you? I smiled just a little. She messaged me. Leona. A few months ago. He swallowed hard. His whole body language changed. The confidence, the easy charm. It flickered and then vanished completely. Now he looked like a kid caught sneaking out past curfew. Look, that situation is complicated. I raised an eyebrow. Is it? Because from what I saw, it looked like you were picking out cake flavors while texting me goodnight. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I didn't plan it. But you let it happen, I said quietly. You let it happen because you liked having options. You liked having someone who made you feel stable while you messed around. He didn't respond. We sat in silence for a moment, the clinking of cups and low chatter of the cafe muffling the tension between us. And then I said something I hadn't planned to say. I'm not here because I want closure. I already gave that to myself. I'm here because I want you to know that I know who you are now. And I'm not going to let you rewrite history. His eyes darted around like he was checking if anyone nearby could hear us. So, what are you going to do? I just smiled and said, That depends on how honest you are with the people around you. Because if you're still lying, Rowan, I think they deserve to know. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, my phone buzzed. It was Mara. I glanced at the screen, then looked back at him. I should go. He didn't try to stop me. I walked out of the cafe with a strange calm in my chest. All right, here's where things really started to shift. After I walked out of that cafe, I sat in my car for a few minutes just breathing, processing. I hadn't gone in with a plan. I didn't even expect to bring up Leona. But the moment I saw Rowan sitting there, lying with that same casual charm, something in me refused to let it slide. I realized I wasn't angry in the explosive, yelling kind of way. I was angry in the cold, steady, clarity kind of way. And I knew I wasn't done. This wasn't about ruining his life. I wasn't going to spread rumors or make a dramatic social media post. But I wasn't going to stay silent, either. Silence is what lets people like Rowan keep doing what they do. The next step was reaching out to Leona again. It had been months since our last message, but she'd left the door open. Her last words to me were, If you ever want to talk again, I'm here. I'm still figuring things out. At the time, I didn't reply. I didn't want to get caught up in her emotional tornado. I had my own storm to manage. But now, I figured she deserved an update. I messaged her, Hey, just wanted to let you know I saw Rowan today. He reached out and asked to meet. He said he'd made a mistake, that he missed me. He didn't mention you. At all. She responded within the hour. Of course he didn't. Can we talk? We scheduled a call that night. I was nervous, not gonna lie. I wasn't sure if she'd be angry at me, or if she'd want to vent, or if she'd already forgiven him and moved on. But when we spoke, I could tell she was tired. Not angry, just drained. She told me she'd called off the engagement a few weeks after our first conversation. Not publicly, only her family and close friends knew. She said she hadn't told Rowan why. She just left. Quietly. I didn't want to explain it, she said. He would have turned it around on me, and I didn't have the energy. But now, she wanted closure. And hearing that he was already trying to rekindle something with me while playing the victim, that pushed her past whatever numbness she'd been sitting in. We talked for over an hour, comparing timelines, filling in gaps. It turned out she'd met him almost a year before I did. And while he was telling me he wasn't ready for commitment, he was meeting her family, attending weddings with her, promising to start house hunting after the holidays. It was sobering. Gross, really. But it also confirmed something important. This wasn't an accident. Rowan didn't fall into dishonesty. He chose it, over and over again. And that made me feel a little more justified in what I did next. Like I said before, I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted him to be held accountable, to feel seen. Rowan had always prided himself on being this upstanding, responsible, tech-savvy guy. He led workshops, mentored interns, even ran this little community blog where he gave advice on cybersecurity and digital wellness. I'd seen him speak at events before. He was smooth, thoughtful, even kind in that very curated, public-facing way. People trusted him. So I wrote something. Not a takedown post. Not a rant. I wrote an open letter. A personal essay, you could say. I didn't name him, but I described what it felt like to be someone's emotional safety net while they lived a double life. I talked about how easy it is for people to craft a version of themselves online, how charm can be used as camouflage, and how manipulation doesn't always look like shouting or cruelty. Sometimes it looks like warmth, consistency, and half-truths stretched over years. I published it anonymously on Medium and linked it in a few forums where he'd previously shared his own blog posts. I didn't promote it. I didn't send it to anyone directly, but I knew people would see it. Within a week, it had been shared over 200 times. Not viral, but enough. Enough that people in his circles started asking questions. Kim texted me one morning. Is this about Rowan? I just saw someone post it on the local tech Slack group. Mara sent me a screenshot of a tweet. Someone had written, reading this makes me rethink every smooth-talking, nice guy I've ever trusted. Rowan didn't message me, but a mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in ages, sent me a DM out of the blue. Leo, hey, not sure if you want to hear this, but Rowan's stepping back from a few things. Said he needs to reassess. I think your essay hit home for some people. Just thought you should know. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat with that quiet sense of satisfaction, not triumph, just peace. I hadn't exposed him. I hadn't dragged him through the mud. I just told the truth, and the truth did the work on its own. But then, a few days later, Rowan did reach out. Not over text, not over email. He showed up, on my doorstep. I opened the door and just stared at him. He looked tired, older, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well. He was holding something, a small envelope. I just wanted to talk, he said quietly. No games. Please. I didn't move. I didn't invite him in. I just crossed my arms and waited. He handed me the envelope. What is this? It's a letter, he said. No pressure. You don't even have to read it. I wanted you to hear the full truth. Everything. I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm trying to make things right. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. It wasn't sealed, just folded and pressed flat. He stepped back. That's all. Take care, Ava. And then he walked away. I held on to Rowan's letter for 2 full days before I opened it. Not because I was afraid of what it said, but because I wanted to be sure why I was opening it. I didn't want to do it out of curiosity or nostalgia or some leftover ache for closure. I wanted to be sure I was opening it from a place of strength, because whatever it said, it wouldn't change what had already happened. When I finally sat down to read it, it was early in the morning. The sun was barely up. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, the apartment quiet, just me and the envelope. The letter was handwritten, 5 pages long. The handwriting was messy at parts, like he'd started writing too fast and had to go back and fix things. The first page was full of apologies. He said he was sorry for how he handled everything, sorry for not being honest, sorry for how much he hurt me. But then came the real stuff. He admitted, in detail, to juggling multiple women over the past few years. Not just me and Leona. There were at least 2 others he had been texting or seeing on and off during overlapping periods. He said it made him feel safe to always have someone to fall back on. He confessed to feeling insecure and needing constant reassurance that he was desirable, wanted, needed. He said he knew it was selfish, and that every time he thought about ending it cleanly with someone, he'd panic and string them along instead. He said I was the one person he genuinely respected, and that was why he never fully committed, because he was afraid I'd see through him. That part? It didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a final punch to the gut. Because if he respected me, why didn't he just treat me with respect? He ended the letter by saying he'd started therapy, that he wasn't asking me for anything, not forgiveness, not friendship. He just wanted me to know the truth, finally. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I tossed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not out of anger. Just closure. That same week, Leona and I grabbed lunch. It wasn't awkward. If anything, it felt like sitting down with someone who'd survived the same storm. She'd officially moved out of the apartment they had shared. She'd taken a new job across the city and was planning a trip with her sister. She said she felt lighter. I could tell she meant it. We talked about Rowan a little, but mostly, we talked about ourselves. It felt like the first real conversation Leona and I had been able to have in a long time, one that wasn't clouded by the confusion and pain of our past entanglements with him. We spent hours just talking, and for once, there was no bitterness between us. We didn't have to justify anything to each other. We were just two women who had been caught up in the same messy situation, and now we were moving forward in our own ways. Leona shared that she was focusing on her career now, making her new place feel like home, and slowly rebuilding her social circle after cutting out the toxicity. I could hear the excitement in her voice when she talked about her new job and the plans she was making for the future. She even mentioned starting to travel more, something she'd always wanted to do but hadn't felt like she had the time or energy for while being stuck in her engagement with Rowan. I told her about how I'd finally gotten back into painting, something I'd put off for years. It felt like a creative spark I'd neglected for far too long. And honestly, reconnecting with that part of myself felt like rediscovering an old friend. We spent most of our lunch talking about our individual dreams and the kind of lives we wanted to build, independent of any romantic relationships. It was refreshing, realizing that we could focus on our own growth now. We didn't need validation from anyone else. It was about us, finally. A few weeks later, I saw that Rowan had quietly deleted his community blog. It wasn't a big dramatic thing, no grand announcement or anything, just a slow fade. The link was dead, and there was no sign of any new posts. He also backed out of an upcoming panel he was supposed to speak at. People noticed. Word had gotten around, I guess. Not because of anything I did directly, just because people talk. People remember. His carefully crafted reputation had started to crumble from the edges, even though he'd done his best to keep everything neat and polished for public consumption. I didn't feel any satisfaction in it. Not like I expected to. It was more like a quiet realization that things were falling into place without me having to keep pushing. I never intended to ruin him or make him suffer. That's not what I wanted. I just wanted to let the truth exist without him controlling the narrative. I wanted him to face the reality of his actions, and that's exactly what was happening. His own choices were coming back to haunt him, and there wasn't anything I had to do to make it happen. One night, a message popped up in my inbox from someone I didn't recognize. It was a woman, someone who seemed familiar, but I couldn't place her at first. She messaged me simply, "Thank you." I thought I was crazy. Now I know I wasn't alone. The message wasn't long, but it hit me hard. This woman had been in one of the same situations with Rowan, one of the ones I had written about in my essay. She was another piece of his puzzle. She wasn't mad or confrontational. She was just grateful. She thanked me for giving her the clarity to understand what had been happening in her own life, for recognizing the patterns that she'd missed, for helping her see that she wasn't the crazy one. That message meant more to me than any apology Rowan ever gave. It was a reminder that the truth had a purpose, whether or not Rowan ever acknowledged it. Other people had been hurt, too, and they deserved to know they weren't alone in the mess he'd created. So what happened in the end? I moved on. For real this time. I didn't take him back. I didn't engage again. There were no long, drawn-out conversations, no attempts at salvaging anything. He wasn't my problem anymore. I realized that I didn't need revenge that left him in ruins. I didn't need to see him suffer the way I thought I might have wanted to. What I needed was to rebuild myself without him in the picture. I needed to take back the space he'd occupied in my mind and heart. And that's exactly what I did. I started painting again, like I said. The first brushstroke was awkward. It had been so long since I'd touched a canvas. But then I found my rhythm. Slowly, I rediscovered my passion, my own creative voice. I reconnected with friends I had pushed away while I'd been too focused on waiting for someone who was never really there. It felt good to have my own life again, to do things for myself without needing someone else's approval. And I met someone new, months later, not a rebound, not a fix, just a kind, quiet start. His name's Jonah. We don't rush things. I make him earn my trust slowly, but he does. And it feels different this time, not because he's perfect, but because I'm different. As for Rowan, I don't know where he is now. I haven't kept up with him, and honestly, I don't care to. Maybe he's still in therapy, trying to work on his issues. Maybe he's continuing his pattern of self-sabotage. Maybe he's trying to learn from all of this. Or maybe not. That part's not mine to carry anymore. The weight of his actions is his to hold, not mine. So, now that you've heard the whole story, I'm wondering, am I the a-hole for publishing that essay? For not warning him directly? For letting his professional world catch on without giving him a heads up first? Or was I justified in quietly telling the truth after everything he did? I'd really love to hear what you think.